Well, good morning and welcome. We're glad you're here joining us on the Grand Rapids Chamber CEO Series. My name is Michael Davenport. I am a resident and a lifelong member of the community. Graduated from Ottawa Hills Elementary School, Iroquois Middle, and then Ottawa Hills High School. Now Bengals, but forever in my heart, I will be an Indian. My time here was absolutely wonderful and great. After graduating from high school, I went to Xavier University in Cincinnati, Ohio. Absolutely knew nothing about Cincinnati other than WKRP was there. Studied psychology at Xavier and actually played on the basketball team. So lifelong dream was to play in the NBA. And like most college athletes, did not do that. And so had always wanted to be an entrepreneur. Ended up going back to law school, and I think this background will be relevant for our, as later on in the conversation. But went to law school, finished there, and worked in a variety of industries. Always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and always wanted to strike out on my own. And I will we'll talk to you a little bit about Gyra and the story, and how Greg and I partnered up, and how we helped me make that dream come true.
Thank you, Michael, and good morning, everybody. My name is Greg VandenBosch, and happy to be here this morning. Like Michael, born and raised here in Grand Rapids, Southeast Grand Rapids, and you'll learn a little bit more about where we met, but first met at almost 40 years ago.
Can you believe that? 40 years? You're old.
40 years ago today.
Yeah.
So we have a long history together. My background I went to Hope College in Holland, Michigan, and upon graduation sort of set out and built a career around entrepreneurial ventures. I was fortunate enough to be involved in a couple of early healthcare startups. The first one I was fortunate enough to sell to a private equity firm back in 2012. The second one we sold to a public company, and the third one, HealthBridge, I'm currently the CEO and of that organization. We're in the process of raising some venture money today. Gyra sits between 1 and 2. So back in 2012, we entered into this Gyra venture.
Yeah, interesting. I'll back up. So growing up, Greg and I, 7th grade back at Iroquois Middle, my dad used to call us the broke Crockett and Tubbs, right? So the broke Miami Vice. So Crockett and Tubbs, they drove a Ferrari around, and we rode in, what was it, an 82 Volkswagen Rabbit?
Yeah, Volkswagen Rabbit.
It was convertible, though.
It was convertible.
Yeah, he drove really fast. That's why I don't have hair today. So a little bit of background about Gyra. Gyra started in 1983 as a tool and die shop, and it became a metal stamper, like lots of metal stampers had their origins out of the tool and die industry. We are an award-winning company. All of our major customers, we've won Supplier Excellence Awards. We have great people that work there, and we really do service a couple of industries: industrial hardware, and then the office furniture. Go West Michigan, right? Office furniture. And so, Greg, why don't you share a little bit about how you heard about the Gyra opportunity and why you thought about me?
Yeah. I was first introduced to this opportunity. I happened to be playing golf and was partnered with the former owner, and he had known that I had recently sold my company, and of course that started some conversations about his interest in potentially selling. And so as soon as I heard that, I immediately thought of Michael. Michael and I had talked about entrepreneurial opportunities, for a dozen years, and Michael had built, a tremendous resume. Of course, I've known him for so long. He's as smart as they get. He's as hardworking as they get. He did all the right things. The only thing missing was the opportunity. And I like to share a story that so Michael and I were in the 7th grade, and we first met. We were on the basketball team together. And I would not get in the game unless we were either down by 40 or up by 40. So it was usually like the last minute of the game. And so Michael would prepare me for this, for my big entrance here in the last minute, and say, make sure when you get in there to shoot it. Right? I mean, you only have like a minute. Like you got to get in there. And he would, and I still remember this, he would always say, while there's no I in team, there is a me.
That's right. There is.
And so make the best of it. And so I sort of reflect back at our gyra experience.
Yeah.
In many ways, I sort of said the same thing back to him. So now it was his opportunity. So when gyra came up, I immediately called Michael.
Yeah. Yeah, so even with the opportunity and you calling and our friendship, it was still extremely scary. So, I'm living in Cincinnati. I got, at that time, I think we're talking 2012, 2013. I mean, you're old. I'm not quite as old. But, when you start looking at that, it was, I'm doing well at where I am. My kids are, I think 8th and 10th grade at the time. My wife's a teacher. And this meant an awful lot to, kind of pack up and move. And so I'm smart enough to know that opportunity comes and you shouldn't look at it, then face and question it. You need to explore it. But when you made the introduction to Ron, who the former owner, and, we met, scheduled a time and a meeting to meet at a coffee shop in downtown Ada. And so I'm driving up from Cincinnati, and I like to think about this, I felt like I had a 5-pound bag of lemons, right? I had a sourpuss face. I did not want to like this opportunity, right? Because I knew what it meant, right? I'm in Cincinnati. What does that mean about coming here? What does it mean for my kids and for my wife and all of those things? But I'm also smart enough to understand that in order to evaluate an opportunity, you really should separate the decision process, right? The first one is really, how will I? Should I? And then the second part of that is, how will I do this? And so as we're exploring the really, should I do this? And so I'm meeting Ron, I'm a handsome dude, at least I like to think so. I got lots of question marks on that one. But you know what? I'm a little bit darker hue than most of the folks here in West Michigan. So I didn't understand truly how that would look. Because when you start thinking about selling a business, and then transferring that over to someone else, there's lots of things that go into that. So we're meeting in downtown Ada. I didn't want to like the deal, but I come out really liking Ron. He turns out to be a great mentor and friend. And now I'm faced with this sort of, how will I, right? So we got a nice price tag on this thing. And, I looked in the cushions of my couch and underneath the floor mats, and I was a little bit short. So here's my friend who has been raising money kind of all of his life. And so, I got a money issue. So guess who I talked to?
Yeah. And of course, raising money is tough, right? It's a hard process. And when I thought about this opportunity, I think there's sort of three major challenges. And number one is Michael had never raised money before.
I spent money.
He spent money. He's never raised money. Number two, your network really, didn't lend itself well to this in terms of the people that knew you didn't know you and didn't know you as an entrepreneur and really in many ways you were sort of untested, right? You were in different industries and really the third point, which is I think probably the most important point, is I guess the cards were stacked against you, and to say a little bit more about that, of course. It's slightly different because my background is on the venture side, and of course this is more of a private equity deal. But he did a little bit of research on what the venture capital space looks like for Black founders or Black CEOs, and it's pretty staggering. So in any given year, so take 2019 as an example, there's about 10,000 companies a year that raise venture money. So on average, last year it was about $136 billion of venture money was raised. And yet, when you look at, in comparison to Black founders, there's only been 343 Black founders who have ever raised venture money. And I read that, and it's a staggering.
So you said, wait a minute, you said there's 10,000 deals in 2019, and since the history of sort of venture capital, there's only been
343, and in fact, venture capital, I think there's arguably the first venture deal was Fairchild Semiconductor in 1957. So this is a 60-plus-year-old industry. In the history of this space, there's only been less than 350 Black founders, and so that's tough, right? And as I started researching this a little bit more, digging into it, looked to a group that had published some research on it. Greylock, which is a venture capital firm out of Silicon Valley, had written a blog post on it, and so I dug in a little bit deeper, and they submitted that when they look at potential entrepreneurs to back, that they tend to look at their school, their education. And in fact, over 20% of the graduates of the schools that they were looking at were in fact minorities, and yet they weren't backing them. Right. And so they submit that that in fact it's really not an educational problem. In fact, it's a network problem. It's a network gap that we need to overcome. And I think that was really, Gyra was a case study in that. Yeah. Michael had done everything in his power, had built this fantastic career, done all the right things, and really had no access to capital. And so I was fortunate enough to be able to help Michael and support him, and we got it done.
But what's interesting on that, I think, is, and I've shared with folks that, so without our relationship, I never would have known about this deal. And think about how, right, you're paired with Ron on a golf course. You happen to have done, venture deals and raised money. But given kind of where I was with the resume, right? So I go to, right, I'm at Xavier, I'm a psychology major, played basketball, I went to law school, graduated from law school, was practicing in banking. I still would not have known about this deal and still would have had a very difficult time raising the money for that. So again, and there's lots of folks, I think, like me, that exist out there. And we've talked about this, it's that transference of trust, right? So if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C, right? That's my math for today. Mm-hmm. But when you vouch for me to Andy and to Ron, that started me at a level that, right? So if 0 is we have no relationship, 10 is we're going on vacation together, I'm starting at 0. How long does it even take to get to level 5 or level 6? Yeah. But the ability for you to open up your network, and for the ability of you folks out there that are listening as CEOs and influencers in this community, the ability for you to open up your networks to folks that are different, is really a game changer for us and for the community. So, yeah, Greg, I've certainly shared with folks about the opportunities that we've had, and who would have known, 40 years ago, sitting on the end of the bench at Iroquois Middle, we're talking, and that the relationship would have, blossomed into this. Never knew you would have been an entrepreneur back then, yeah. But should have. Your dad was certainly one. So. We've shared really around, kind of that Gyra story, what friendship over 40 years looks like, what it means to sort of open up your network to folks and really step out and vouch for folks, and this whole idea of transference of trust. If we want more Gyras in West Michigan, and if we want West Michigan to be more inclusive in all the ways, in all the great things that we are, this is a great city, a great region. We're going to have to open up the networks. And for the folks that are out there, right, so the people that are listening, right, your CEOs, your influencers in your communities, I got a couple of challenges for you, right? So first of all, you should really look at, making sure that you are inclusive, right, that you are including all kinds of folks that are out there. As a leader in an organization, I'm going to ask you, who are you getting your advice from, right? So what does your board look like? Is that board diverse? Do you have women on there? Do you have minorities on there? And then I'll ask, who are you spending your money with as an organization? If we want companies like the ones that have been on this stage, coming on this stage, and like Gyra, you'll want to, spend some of your money there through a supplier program. We appreciate your time and thank you for being with us. And hopefully you like the story. If anybody wants to hear more about it, feel free to reach out to me, Michael Davenport, and I'd be glad to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael and Greg. What a great story. Those are the conversations that we need to lean into. Those are the discussions that, as West Michigan business leaders, we need to have. We're going to take a short break before our next inspirational leadership lesson, which will feature Mike Novakoski, President and CEO of EV Construction.